We live in a twilight world. Hopefully this will be a quick recording. It's going to be a very slow-paced recording, I think. Because for this one, I haven't got like a slideshow set up or anything. So it's going to be very slow-paced. Me searching for the images that I want and stuff. But yeah, man, we're going to briefly touch upon the so-called Moscow massacre that happened yesterday at the Crocus City Hall. Crocus of shit. And yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to spend too much time in it because that's the whole point of this, yeah? Okay, for the people close to it, as in physical reality location, yes, it was an illusion operation for them. And it ticks all the boxes of illusion warfare, and so on and so on. But for everyone else in the world that lives a million miles away, it's now a digital double-cross operation. You know, the story, if you was to go on Twitter right now, if you was to go on YouTube right now, if you was to go on TikTok right now, all you're going to be hearing about is people speculating and trying to solve the puzzle that is the Moscow massacre. The whole thing with these double-cross operations is they deliberately put in inconsistencies, they deliberately put in plot holes, and they want you on that. They want you, like I said, trying to be the Sherlock Holmes detective solving this crime. Yeah? We're in the age of the TikTok war. And if you don't know what the TikTok war is, they're referring to this thing called OSINT, Open Source Intelligence. The idea that you or someone online, maybe what they call themselves an OSINT account, will search TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all these places that can live stream, and they'll gather all these bits of, all these snippets of footage, and they are caught in the assumption and the trap of thinking that because this has been filmed allegedly by some little old granny on her phone who was there at the event, that therefore it's real. You know, people think that, oh, only CNN and the BBC and so on can lie, and if it comes from someone's mobile phone, from their smartphone, that therefore it's somehow real. But it's very easy just to put 20, 30 MI6 agents at the scene of the illusion operation with their camera phones who film the theatre and then post that footage online for the OSINT community to lap it up and start spreading it. You know what I'm saying? It snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. So yeah, man, OSINT is a big danger to our reality, I think, because yeah, they want you, the everyday person at home, to feel like the great conspiracy theorist detective solving the crime. And they're going to give you all of the chicken feed. They're going to let you in on that crime scene with things like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, live streams, Facebook live streams, you know, all this business, yeah? This is the reality we're in now. And this is why illusion warfare is going to go through the fucking roof. And why it is through the roof. Because before these events, we only had people like the mainstream media to give us the footage. Now everyone's a walking surveillance unit that wants to film everything, and everyone's addicted to social media. They're doing the theatrics out in public, and it's one or the other. It's like I said, you just got to put 20 MI6 agents out there, or you do it close enough so the public film it anyway and take on that role and become the propagandists. They become the CNN cameraman, and then they are a part of the blitzkrieg propaganda of making this stuff seem real. You get what I'm saying? So anyway, let's get back to it. So yesterday was the 22nd of the 3rd, 223. Or if you're in that weird place of America where you for some reason do it backwards and put the month before a day, it will be 322. Yeah? Yet again, that date, does that date actually mean anything? Or are they deliberately picking conspiracy theorist dates because now the vast majority of the masses are conspiracy theorists? We've had the pole shift in 2020, and most of the normies are now conspiratorial minded. So if you put it on a skull and bones date like that, that's perfect to get all. It's bait, you know what I mean? It's like a juicy worm on the end of a hook to get all of the conspiratorial-minded truthers in on it. Okay? For me, obviously, it's very validating, and a lot of people are like giving me a little bit of a pat on the back because, it took place in a theatre, which is something I've been banging on about for a long time now, about world stage theatre always taking place either somewhat in a theatre, in front of a theatre, next to a theatre, or opera house, or anything, performing arts centre, or anything like that, okay? I've been tracking this stuff for a long time. And later on in this video, we'll get to where that kind of really hit home for me. Because today is the 23rd of the 3rd, and it's the 1-year anniversary of when I went to Paris. And I was done a boots on the ground illusion warfare report covering the Paris riots, and probably some of my greatest work. We'll touch upon that in a sec. So yeah, happened in a theatre, and I'm not going to post any videos, but it's very similar to the opening scene of the film Tenet. And if you remember, in the opening scene of Tenet, there was a bluff. There was a fake terrorist attack in an opera house, and it's very similar to what we saw last night coming out of Moscow. Now, in Tenet, it's actually set in Kiev. Now, Moscow and Kiev right now are kind of juxtaposed to each other, aren't they, in kind of ideology and the war and so on. In Tenet, although it was set in Kiev, it was actually filmed in Tallinn, in Estonia. And it was a former Soviet Union Olympic swimming arena, I believe. But anyway, I digress. That's not really about this. So yeah, man, the events in Moscow last night had all of the tick boxes and had illusion warfare written all over it. So it took place in a theatre. That's the wink wink. Allegedly, it started at 2000 hours. Yeah, so you got the 20, you got the XX. The double cross, the masterminds, in my opinion, of all of this world stage theatre. Yeah. But I spent about 2 hours looking at it, and that was it for me. I saw enough. This is the fourth industrial revolution. Yeah, they want you. What you've got to remember with all this kind of thing, with what I was talking about earlier about you being the detective that solves these crimes, right? With the endless supply of chicken feed to keep you pecking, the OSINT community, all of this kind of stuff. This is the fourth industrial revolution. It's digital. They want you sat in front of the Black Mirror all day long, either consuming content or creating content. What I'm doing right now, this is what I'm saying. I know it sounds kind of contradictory, right? But right now, I am in the trap right now of making a video, and that's what they want. They want you either making a TikTok video or a fucking YouTube video or a podcast, a 2-hour-long podcast discussing this, because you're there where you want. This the new 9 to 5, sat in front of a computer screen, sat in front of the Black Mirror, wasting your time and energy, in some shape or form, either discussing or trying to pull apart something that only exists on the Black Mirror. Black Mirror reality. Illusion-based attention economy. The Black Mirror economy. Call it whatever you want. You get what I'm saying. So, yeah. Let's take a quick look at a map. So here is allegedly the Crocus City Hall. Of course, I haven't been to Moscow, and, at this moment in time, we're not allowed. Us Westerners are not allowed into Moscow. I'm sure there's some backdoor entries, but, if you're going to turn up into the Federation of Russia with a British passport, I think you're going to have some fucking troubles. I know a lot of famous travel vloggers have pretty much been kicked out of Russia and so on. Tricky. But as you can see, regarding illusion warfare and strategic location, is here, right over the Moskva River. So all they would have had to do is shut off The Hidden Hand would have got their forces to shut off the area here. You know, barricades, police blockades, whatever. You know, got to remember, the police are not in on it. They're just told to come here, shut down this road, create a barrier. We want to contain this. And they're just doing their jobs. And within here would have been the performers, the theatrics, and so on. So let's say I was a resident in Moscow and I wanted to go and investigate to see how real this was. I would have got to here and I would have met a police blockade or, the special military police they got out there would have blocked off this, and it would have been a no-go area. Just like it was for me in Paris, in France, which we'll get to in a minute. So yeah, man, just shut this off, and this now is contained. You just got to shut this off on land, and the river does the rest, right? Now imagine the Ghost Legion, these agents of the double cross, what I call the Ghost Legion, the League of Shadows, that would have been running around in the costumes, the costume of the terrorist, the costume of the firefighter, and the costume of the counter-terrorism units would have merely jumped on boats and fucked off down the river, out of sight and out of the way. And then the public, you might have had some of the masses here observing it all, probably being held back here by a police blockade line, observing it all. But yeah, man, as for the Hidden Hand troops, the foot soldiers, the Ghost Legion, they would have just gone off downriver. If you've been following my work, you'll know that a lot of this stuff happens close to rivers or on an island where people with the right kind of transportation can just vanish. They can enter these places and vanish from these places with extreme ease. And all of the dupes, including us, the public, and the regular police, and the regular firefighters, they are contained by roads. They can only travel by land, and for them, it's a real experience, and they are pushed into a performance, and unbeknownst to them, they're part of it, and so on. So yeah, always by a river, always at a theatre. Yeah. Someone actually messaged me saying that they've run a lot of the footage through some kind of AI software program. And he said something along the lines of that 62% of it was coming back as AI generated. I think what he's implying is that a lot of the footage of people running around with guns is AI. Yeah, maybe so. Who knows? I mean, look, all I know is I know nothing, right? I'm just only speculating. And for me, just sitting behind a computer screen saying everything is AI, that's no good to me, man. I focus on how it appears real to people. Yeah? You might have an auntie that worked in a hospital during the scamdemic and totally processes the whole scamdemic as real. What I do with illusion warfare is I bridge the gap. How are they using smoke and mirrors to create a real sensory reality for those people that are processing it as real, that can't see the illusion? Yeah? You might have a cousin that went and done a tour in Afghanistan, and for them, they will protest that the war in Afghanistan was a real war. So I look at and I provide good evidence to show people how that is achieved, how smoke, mirrors, theatricality and deception is used to give these people a real experience. Yeah? So your auntie worked in a hospital during the scamdemic. She's not in on it. She's a victim of illusion warfare. Yeah? Your cousin that done 3 tours in Afghanistan, he's not part of the deception. He is a victim of the deception. You get what I'm saying? So that's it. I think that's all I'm really going to focus on. Right now, at this moment in time, the day after, you can bet yourself there is a real reaction. The purpose of the illusion, or the illusion operation, or the illusion warfare in general, is to manifest a real reaction and a real response. So you can bet your bollocks that over in Russia right now, paranoia is going to be through the roof. Not only for citizens, but for the police as well. The police will be on high alert. Probably a lot of the police that are meant to be, have a day off today have been called in. They'll be patrolling the streets. They'll be harassing people. They'll be shaking people down. Of course, this will agitate and anger civilians. Civilians might now get into altercations with the police. Guaranteed there will be police blockades and checkpoints at certain locations. I imagine a lot of kind of public spaces will be closed today. Terrorism threat. The terrorism threat is probably at level 5 or whatever, which is really high, red. And when terrorism level is at red, it means the state has emergency powers, which will be, of course, the real response reaction to a phony engineered event. You see, purpose of the illusion is to manifest a real reaction response. So, yeah, I don't really think there's much more we can talk about. These are pictures on, Google Maps of Crocus of Shit City Hall. It's obviously a kind of exhibition center where, certain things happen. But yeah, the main top part is a theater, red seats, curtains, stage lighting. And this is where the terrorists were allegedly running around shooting at people. And like I said, it was pretty much the exact same performance as the beginning of the film Tenet. The thing about Tenet is Tenet was, in the story set in the Kiev Opera House. Now, of course, with the current situation in the world, Kiev and Moscow are the two juxtaposed kind of factions, right? The Kiev regime and the Moscow regime are, supposedly at war with each other right now. In reality, where that was filmed, the Tenet scene was actually in Tallinn, in Estonia, and it was a former Soviet Union Olympic swimming pool, I believe. But yeah, the Crocker City Hall was clearly like an exhibition centre where they hold events. Interesting, it's got it's spelt in English, right? It's anglicised, Anglo-Saxon writing here, City Hall. Why is that in a place that's in Russia? But the building itself, classic kind of opera theatre building, giant black cube. But yeah. I wonder what Vegas is. Of course, temporarily closed today. Yeah. So anyway, let's now look at something else. So yeah, man, today is the 23rd of the 3rd. And this time last year, which was the 23rd of the 3rd, 2023, I went over to France to do a boots on the ground investigation of the civil unrest that was happening. The 23rd, the reason I chose the 23rd is because that was said to be the biggest day of national protest for a long time in French history, maybe ever. I can't really remember, but of all the protesting that had been going on in the previous days and weeks, this was going to be the biggest. According to the alternative media, they reckoned it was 6 million people out on the streets. No, I don't believe it was that big. Not in Paris anyway. Maybe across the whole of France. I don't know. That's kind of a lot. But one of the things that was kind of bugging me about the French protests is that the alternative media were jumping on it. And they were pushing it more than the mainstream media were. And the truther community was basically saying, like, this is it, France has woken up, and they're basically making out like, like the French were going to basically drag Emmanuel Macron out of his palace and kill him. And this was going to be the Great Awakening, and there was going to be something inspiring other nations to do the same thing. And clearly this is not the case, right? And the truthers, it's the problem with the truthers that they jump on things too quickly. I'd seen from all the footage there was clearly something off. Even I seen a Sky News reporter say that the fighting between protesters and riot police was so common now, it had become like staged, choreographed theatre. And obviously, me, I use that term a lot, stage choreographed theatre. And that's the best way to describe the fighting that was happening between the alleged protesters and the riot police. So let me just do a bit of background, okay? So I would say a couple of days before the protesting and civil unrest started happening in France, videos started emerging online of British troops on the streets of France doing live action role play urban fighting. They were obviously using blank rounds, but they were kind of, doing street to street fighting. But what was really odd was there was members of the public bemused walking past that were just trying to get on with their day-to-day lives. So there'd be a whole row of like Gurkha troops, Nepalese troops that fight for the British, kind of lying down, manning the general purpose machine guns, all lying flat in a prone position. And then there's like little old women with their bags of shopping, like trying to get home and like having to step over them. People pushing their women pushing their kids along in a pushchair and having to go in the road and go around them, like looking like, what the fuck is going on here? And that to me was the kind of, it sparked in my head, okay, there's something going on here. There's a relation going on between that stuff and the protests that were happening in France. And then that's when I discovered exercise Orion 23. Now, this was the largest French exercise on French soil, I think for something like 30 years or something like that. It was a NATO exercise being led by the French. And, basically France was taking the role in a fictitious battle where France was basically playing the role of Ukraine, and they were trying to push out a fictional enemy called Mercure, which was basically Russia, pushing out the military, coming in, landing in the south, amphibious landing, and then moving up and pushing out this militia. And yeah, it was meant to be training ready for potential Russian stuff. Now, obviously, this meant lots of troops, NATO troops, US, British, Spanish, Italian, French, running around in actual streets in actual France, armor moving around, tanks moving around, and so on. This, of course, in 50 years' time, could be used as supposed real events. They're going to try and portray it as real events regarding World War III. But anyway, for me, I came to a conclusion, or more so in the beginning, I speculated that this exercise was cover story for the protests that were happening in France. Under the guise of a NATO exercise is a good way to get NATO troops, League of Shadow troops, Ghost Legion troops into France. They put on the costumes of protesters and rioters and riot police, do a load of phony fighting and fuck off. So essentially, the authorities would organize a genuine march down the street, with DJs and microphones, bullhorns, balloons, fucking all that kind of shit. And I kind of documented this in my thread, that this is what happened, okay? And I kind of done a good job. So I'm not going to go through it all now, but yeah, basically, it's probably best to actually look at a map. If we go look at a map, I think a map's better. So I've forgotten the layout of France, I'm going to be honest with you. But, okay, it started in a place called Bastille, and it went to a place called Concorde, right? Which is pretty much, if you're, aware of France and any kind of civil unrest that happens in France, it usually always kind of gathers and starts at Bastille and it ends up in Concorde. Place de la Concorde is famously where they had the French Revolution, and allegedly they guillotined a load of, the people in charge back in those days, right? So I did that. I done a good job of documenting that, regular people turned out to this protest, but it got to a point around here where it all just kind of dissipated. And then what happened was crazy, and I got all this kind of on camera. Police basically showed up on motorbikes, loads of them, and they basically sealed off the area around Opera. Now, I didn't notice the Opera House at the time. I just know that the police sealed off this area. Okay, so us regular people couldn't get onto this. And behind this line, this police blockade, is where a load of the theatrical fighting was happening. And it was pure live action role play. It was Exercise Orion troops, Ghost Legion troops, whatever you want to call them, both wearing the costume of the protester and the riot police, just doing a lot of fake phony fighting here, throwing smoke bombs at each other, throwing glass bottles at each other. Of course, within this zone, this film set, there was also Exercise Orion or Op Gladio photographers that were running alongside it all with their smartphones filming it all. And then, of course, this would have flooded the internet and people thought it was real. So yes, thousands of people met up to go and protest down the street, but it hit a point where it stopped. We were blocked off. And yeah, it all happened behind this line. Now, I didn't know at the time it was at a train station called Opera in front of the actual Opera House. I didn't know that at the time. It's only the next day I woke up and I thought I'd go and check out the area and look for some clues and stuff, that it hit me. Oh shit. This all happened at train station Opera in front of the Paris National Opera House. And that's when I kind of it literally hit home. Literally hit home that World Stage Theatre is done in front of theatre buildings or opera buildings. This is where it really hit home. Now, I know, throughout history, this has obviously happened. Okay, like Julius Caesar got murdered in front of a theatre. The president who got shot in the theatre in the back of the head, assassinated. Was it George Washington or Lincoln? I can't even remember. Mariupol, if you remember, in the beginning of Ukraine, the Battle of Mariupol, all the documentaries that have come out recently, 20 Days in Mariupol, XX Days in Mariupol, that all happened around the theatre, right? Everyone was hiding in a theatre. A lot of the actors who were actors in the theatre were also the ones appearing on the documentary, giving their testimony and stuff. So yeah. And I'm not going to get into it now, but over the past couple of years, I've been documenting this, all right? Locations where stuff is allegedly happening in and around opera houses and theatre places, So yeah, anyway, I want to keep this video kind of short. I think I've spoken long enough. We are in the op era. And I think we've seen that once again with the events that happened last night regarding Moscow. We live in a twilight world. There are no friends at dusk.